Good morning all of you. Now today, in continuation with the same history chapter, Independent India, we will have a look at India gets a constitution. Now if you remember, we started this chapter with India and Pakistan being divided and the new governments thus formed. Now they had to face so many problems because there were so many migrants and means those who cross borders from both the sides. Then there was a problem of providing homes and jobs to these migrants, and if when we are talking about India, then even the question of those princely states was left undecided and they had to be persuaded to join the nation. Then the problem of unity was there because there were so many social evils prevalent in the society, and there were people of high caste and low caste, people belonging to different religions, regions and all that. There was so much diversity, and so there was a problem of unity, and to it was also added the problem of development because the economic condition of India was very poor, and so economic productivity has to be increased, and along with that new industries have to be established so that people get jobs and all that. So that was the condition of the country and the people here, and we also had a look at aftermath of partition, that what happened after that, and we had a look at the assassination of Mahatma Gandhi. And so now when it was decided that now power would be shifted from the British Crown to India, so they started to discuss about what would be the constitution of new country. Like, so they started having these meetings of the Constituent Assembly, and so between December 1946 and November 1949 a series of meetings took place, and this was to decide as to what would be the political future of the country, as to like what type of government we'll have. Though there had been talks about it way back when even Motilal Nehru ji, he also talked about what would be the main ideals of the Indian constitution. So but during this time they decided they just got together to decide that what would the Indian constitution look like. And so these meetings of the Constituent Assembly, they were held in New Delhi, and the result of these meetings was the Indian Constitution, which was enforced on 26 January 1950. Okay, so our constitution was enforced on 26 January 1950. On which date was it adopted? Does anyone know? On which date was it adopted? It was enforced on 26 January 1950, but when was it adopted? Any idea, anyone? Yes, class 8. Okay, so it was adopted on 26 January 1949. 26 November 1949. So the constitution was adopted on 26 November 1949, and it was enforced on 26 January 1950. Now why 26 January? Because if it was adopted on 26 November, why was not that day chosen? Now this was because 26 January was chosen because of its historical importance. Now if you remember, when we were doing the last chapter, so we studied about the Purna Swaraj resolution which was passed at the Lahore session of the Indian National Congress, and in that they have taken a resolution that 26 January 1930 they will celebrate as the Purna Swaraj, or the complete Independence Day. And so when they got to decide as to which day they will call India a republic, so they chose this day because of its historical importance. Now let's have a look at some of the main features of our constitution. Now one of the main features of the constitution was the adoption of universal adult franchise. Does anyone know what is universal adult franchise?
Ma'am, universal adult franchise means the right to vote. Every adult has a right to vote after
Okay.
the age of 18 years.
Alright, so universal adult franchise means that all adult population, irrespective of any difference. Now that difference could be on the basis of religion, caste, gender, social status, education. So irrespective of any difference, all people, all adult population would be allowed to vote. Now first, all Indians above the age of 21 were allowed to vote in elections, but now we know that it has gone down to 18. Now this had been such a huge change because Indians, they had never been allowed to vote earlier. And even during the provincial elections under the British rule, you know, only a little section of a society, only the higher classes, they were allowed to vote, and that only men. And they were allowed to vote. So this was like very huge change for the Indians. And you know, then on the other hand, what happened in countries, even in countries like USA and UK, you know, this right to give vote, now it has been granted to people in stages. First, only the property section, means people who own property, they got the right to vote. Then the educated classes, they got the right to vote. Then it was passed on to the working classes, but all male. And finally, you know, after waging wars for so many years, the women, they finally got the right to vote in UK and USA. And whereas in India, every citizen got the right to vote irrespective of gender, class or education at one go. So now this was a very important move and a very important feature of our constitution. Now second, all citizens here were guaranteed equality before the law. You know, this is our first fundamental right, also right to equality. And what that means is that irrespective of any difference that the people might have based on caste, creed, gender, religion, color, social status, education, all people are equal before the law, and the law should treat all peoples equally irrespective of any difference that they might have. Now, you know, at the time when India got independent, now there were some Indians who wished that India should become a Hindu state, and they said that just like Pakistan, they look about the welfare of a particular community, so India also should become a Hindi state. But you know, Jawaharlal Nehru and many people along with him, they were of the opinion that how could they make India a Hindu Pakistan? Just like Pakistan, if it looks after the welfare of the Muslims, so how can they make India a Hindu Pakistan? And you know, besides India, in addition to Hindus and Muslims, there were people like Sikhs and Christians and Parsis and Jains, so many other people, they were also living here. And so under the new constitution, all people belonging to whatever religion they were following, all were granted equal rights under the new constitution. Now, the third feature of our constitution is that it gave certain special privileges to the poorest section of the people and to the disadvantaged, discriminated sections of the people. You know, in India, caste system was prevalent at that time, and you know, according to the caste system, the people, they were divided into 4 castes. Okay, what were the 4 castes into which people were divided? Come on, class 8, under the caste system, you know, people were divided into 4 castes. What were those 4 castes? Hurry up, what is the problem? Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, you're audible.
Ma'am, the untouchable.
That was just one, and that also it was not the main caste. I want to know what were the 4 main castes under the caste system.
Ma'am,
Ma'am, Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishya, Shudras.
Right, Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishya and Shudras. So, you know, among the Shudras, there was one group of people which were called as the untouchables. And you know, it was thought that the mere touch of these people, that is why they were called as untouchables, that their mere touch, they would corrupt a person or make them impure. And so, you know, the people of the untouchable class, they were not allowed to draw water from the public wells, and they were not allowed to go to the temples, their children were not allowed to go to schools to study. And so under the new constitution, not only special rights were given to the poor and these discriminated people, but also untouchability was abolished. And so now Hindu temples, which were previously only open to upper caste, now they were open to all. Then later on, the Constituent Assembly, they decided that a certain percentage of seats in legislative bodies. What are legislative bodies, by the way? Legislative bodies? What is the work of legislature? Yes.
Ma'am, it makes the laws.
Right, it makes the laws. All right. So, you know, they thought that it will be better to give a percentage of seats in legislative bodies also to these people, because if they will have a representation there in the legislative bodies, then, you know, they will be able to work more for the welfare of the people. And so, you know, a certain set of certain percentage of seats were reserved for these people in the legislative bodies as well as in government jobs, because it was felt that these untouchables or the Harijans or the scheduled castes, they did not have enough grades to pass the Indian Administrative Services exam, that is the IAS. And H.J. Khandekar, now he said that the condition of the lower caste was such because of the people of the upper caste, because the people of the upper caste, they have suppressed the people for so long, they have ill treated and discriminated them for so long, that is why it is their condition. And so not only seats were reserved for them in the legislative bodies, but also in government jobs seats were reserved for them. Okay, Harijan, what does Harijan mean? Yes, class? Harijan? What is the meaning of Harijan?
Not the scheduled caste.
Beta, tell me the meaning of the word Harijan. What is the meaning of Hari and what is the meaning of Jan? That is what I want to know. Hari is used for whom? Hari means? No idea? Hari is used for God. Hari is used for God.
Ma'am,
And
this one was G for Dalits.
I know, but I am simply asking you the meaning. Gandhiji coined this name for the untouchables because he did not like this term Dalits and all. So he called them Harijan. Yes. What is the meaning?
Ma'am, children.
Children?
Ma'am, children of God.
Right, children of God. Harijan, Jan is people. So people of God or children of God. And so, because Gandhiji, he stood for equality, and he wanted to uplift these people also, and that is why he never used the term scheduled caste or Dalits for them, and he used the word Harijan for them, that just like the rest of the people, they are also people of God. Now along with the untouchables, the Adivasis or the scheduled tribes, now they were also granted reservation in seats and in jobs, because just like the scheduled caste, these people also, these tribals also, they have been discriminated for long, and the places where they lived, in remote areas, in the forest and all that, proper education facilities, healthcare facilities did not reach them, and so these people also lagged behind a lot, and many times their forests and their lands have been taken away from them, no proper education or healthcare facilities, and so under the new constitution, this was to be replaced by new set of privileges, special extra privileges for these people by the constitution. Then the Constituent Assembly, they also spent many days discussing that what should be the powers of the central government. Now some said that the central government, it should be more powerful, so that it is able to keep the entire country together and united and all that, and then then it will be also in a better position to think and plan for the entire country and control the entire country better. But then there were other section of the people who decided that no, the provinces, they should be made more autonomous, or they should be given more freedom to rule the states or the provinces as they wished. And the constitution, it has tried to strike a balance between all this by providing 3 lists of subjects on which laws are made. And so we have the union list, the state list, and the concurrent list. Union list, the subjects which are mentioned in the union list, only the union government or the central government can make laws in that. So there we have subjects like defense and foreign affairs and taxes and all things on which we need uniform laws throughout the country, and so the central government, it makes laws on those subjects. Then the subjects which are necessary and important for a state, like law and order and other things, now that comes under the state list. And the subjects which are mentioned under the state list, the central government, they cannot interfere in those laws, in that lawmaking. And then we come to the third list, which is called as a concurrent list, and in list subjects like forest and agriculture, education, public health, welfare, all that are mentioned, and the subjects which are mentioned in the concurrent is both the state government and the central government they can make laws, but because you know they are of importance to both the central government as well as the state government, but in case there is a conflict, then the laws which are made by the central government they prevail, because you know in our federation the central government it tends to be more powerful. Federation, you know, you must have studied about this. Tell me, what is a federal form of government? A federal government? Federal form of government? Yes. Hurry up. Does anyone know what is a federal form of government? No idea, class 8?
Ma'am, when one or two countries collide to form a government.
Two countries? No. It could be like
Ma'am,
there are coming together federations.
that
Yes.
ma'am, a system of government that divides the power of government.
Alright, so basically what we can say in that we have more than one level of government. We have a central government for the entire country and different state governments to rule the different states. So the federal form of government can be of it is more than one type, so it can be of two or more tiers. Now like in our country when we started we have only the central government and the state governments, but you know later on a third tier of government or the third level of government, that is the local self-governing bodies, they were also introduced in the form of panchayats in villages, municipalities in towns and municipal cooperation like for big cities like Lucknow. And so that is what the federal system of government is, having government at more than one level. Powers to rule are divided at different levels. Okay. So now you know another important concern of the Constituent Assembly when they were discussing about the whole thing, now that was language. Now many felt that after the Britishers leave, so English language it should be replaced by Hindi, but you know but those states which were non-Hindi speaking states, now they had a very different opinion on this matter, and T.T. Krishnamachari he conveyed a warning on behalf of all the non-Hindi speaking states of the south, and now what they said, they threatened to break away from India, to separate from India if Hindi was imposed on them. And so you know a compromise was reached, and according to it Hindi would stay as the official language of India, whereas English would continue to be used in courts and services and communication between one state and another. So that was because you know the Hindi speaking states they did not wanted Hindi to be imposed on them. Okay, so we'll stop here for today. I hope all of you have understood. Any confusion here?
No, ma'am.
All right.